You know, we talk a lot about thinking, but have you ever stopped to wonder who actually taught us how to think? I mean, who wrote the instruction manual for logic itself? Well, today we're diving into the story of that guy. He didn't just ask questions, he literally built the systems we still use to find answers, in everything from science to politics to our own lives. Let's get into the incredible story of the man who gave the world the blueprint for reason, Aristotle.
And here's the thing that's just wild about him. This guy, he didn't fight battles, but he trained the man who conquered the known world. He never ever wore a crown, but he shaped the minds of kings, emperors, and thinkers for like 2,000 years. So how? How does one person with basically nothing but his own curiosity end up changing the entire course of history? That's the question we're going to unpack.
So, where does a story like that even begin? Well, it doesn't start with a sword or a crown. It all starts with a question. The simplest but most powerful question there is. Why? Okay, so picture this. You're a kid growing up in ancient Greece, right? But you're not just playing with sticks and rocks. Your dad is the personal doctor to the king of Macedonia. So you're surrounded by two things from day one: incredible power and science, a very specific, practical way of looking at the world. You know, observe, diagnose, figure out the logical next step. That whole process just got baked into his DNA from the very beginning. But then, tragedy strikes. And it strikes hard. As a young boy, he's orphaned. He loses both of his parents. And you'd think that would break someone, right? Make them ask, why me? But that's not what he did. Instead, that loss became this fuel. It turned into an obsession with the biggest questions of all. Not why me, but what is life and what is death? The pain didn't shatter him, it gave him a laser focus.
So, what do you do with that kind of drive? Well, at just 17 years old, he packs his bags and heads to Athens. And we're talking about the center of the intellectual universe at the time. He walks right into the most famous school in the world, Plato's Academy. Think of it like the Harvard or Oxford of its day, but, the first one ever. And for the next 20 years, this place is his home. And he doesn't just fit in. He becomes the star pupil, the most brilliant student Plato had ever seen.
But here's the thing about being a star student. Eventually, you have to step out of your teacher's shadow. And a moment was coming that was going to force Aristotle to find his own path, his own voice. And this is where we get to the core of it, the big disagreement that would change everything. You had his teacher, Plato, who was all about the ideal world of forms. He'd say the real tree isn't the one you see, it's the perfect idea of a tree that exists somewhere out there. But Aristotle? Nah. He was like, let's look at this tree right here. He wanted to touch it, study it, understand it. For him, the real world wasn't a shadow of something else. The real world was what was right in front of us. This wasn't just some academic debate, you guys. This was a full-blown revolution in how to think.
And, well, that philosophical difference had some pretty massive real-world consequences. See, when Plato died, everyone, and I mean everyone, assumed Aristotle would be the one to take over the academy. But he wasn't. He got passed over. His ideas were just too different, too focused on the messy real world. So after 20 years of being the top guy, he was suddenly an outsider, heartbroken, and basically homeless. So what does he do? At 37 years old, with no job and nowhere to go, he starts to wander. He ends up on the island of Lesbos. And there, surrounded by the sea and all its creatures, that obsession he had with the real world, it just completely explodes. He shifts his focus from just thinking about human life to thinking about all life.
And this is where his philosophy really comes alive. He's not just sitting around thinking anymore. He is looking. I mean, get this. He's the one who figured out that dolphins aren't fish. They breathe air. He watched octopuses change color to hide. He literally documented how a chick develops inside an egg, step by step. In an age where everyone was just debating abstract ideas, Aristotle was out there creating the entire field of biology from scratch, all based on one radical idea. If you want to understand the world, you have to actually look. So while Aristotle is busy dissecting fish and studying octopuses, something else is happening. Halfway across the Greek world, a very powerful king is thinking about him. And this is going to lead to maybe the most famous and important student-teacher relationship in all of history. The message from King Philip II of Macedonia was simple, but it was powerful. Come teach my son. And that son was a wild, brilliant kid named Alexander. The king knew his boy was destined for war, but he wanted him to learn wisdom first. And Aristotle? He said yes. Just Pause and think about that for a second. The greatest mind of the ancient world teaching the kid who would become the greatest military commander of the ancient world. This has happened exactly once in all of human history. One time. This was it. And what Aristotle taught Alexander wasn't just battle strategy. No, he taught him something way more powerful. He taught him logic, he taught him ethics, he taught him politics, and he drilled one core idea into him. Being a great king isn't just about conquering lands, it's about understanding them. So, once Alexander sets off on his world-conquering tour, Aristotle heads back to Athens. But think about the difference. He's not the rejected student anymore. Oh no. Now, he's the guy who taught Alexander the Great. He's back, and he's ready to build something that will last. He founds his very own school, called the Lyceum. And it was totally different from Plato's Academy. This place was all about active, dynamic learning. His students were actually called the Peripatetics, which literally means the ones who walk around. Why? Because Aristotle taught while walking through the gardens, debating, observing, making knowledge a living, breathing thing. But then, the world gets turned upside down. In 323 BC, at the height of his power, Alexander the Great just dies, suddenly. His massive empire starts to crumble almost immediately. And back in Athens, they're celebrating. They saw Alexander as a tyrant. And once the tyrant was gone, they turned their anger on his teacher. He's charged with impiety. Sound familiar? It's the exact same charge that got Socrates executed decades earlier. Aristotle saw the writing on the wall. He saw history about to repeat itself, and he fled the city, famously saying, "I will not allow Athens to sin twice against philosophy." He died in exile just a year later, and for a long, long time, it looked like his incredible body of work might have just died with him. But what happened next? Honestly, it's one of the greatest survival stories in the history of ideas. It's just unbelievable. Okay, look at this journey. It's just insane. After he dies, his most important writings, they vanish for almost 200 years. Poof, gone. Turns out they were hidden away in a damp cellar. They're eventually rediscovered and taken to Rome. But then, centuries later, they're saved, studied, and expanded upon by brilliant scholars during the Islamic Golden Age. It was actually through their work and their translations that Aristotle's ideas finally made their way back to Europe, where they became the absolute foundation of the modern university. A 1,000-year journey, barely escaping being lost forever at every turn. So why? Why did these ideas survive when so many others were lost? I think it's because they get at the heart of what it means to be human. Take this one idea he had, eudaimonia. Now, the easy translation is just happiness, but it's so much deeper than that. It's about flourishing. It's about living a life that's full, meaningful, and virtuous. It's about reaching your absolute highest potential as a human being. And the best part is, he didn't just give us this lofty goal and say good luck. He gave us the toolkit to get there. He taught us about the golden mean, finding that sweet spot, that balance between extremes. He told us that being a good person isn't something you're born with. Virtue is a habit. We are what we repeatedly do. He told us to find our purpose. And he gave us the master key to unlock it all, logic, the actual system for figuring out what's true and what isn't. You know, when you look back, his student Alexander built this massive empire of land, and it crumbled into dust. But Aristotle, he built something way more lasting. He didn't build an empire of land, he built an empire of reason. He didn't conquer cities, he conquered ignorance. And that empire, well, in a lot of ways, we're all still living in it today. So his real legacy, it isn't a statue or a palace. It's a toolkit, a set of mental tools for analyzing the world, for living a better life, and for searching for truth. He gave us the how. He taught us how to think. So the only question he really leaves for us, for you, is what are you going to think about?